You're listening to the Cinik Radio Podcast. Now, your hosts, Igrihe and Cinik.
And you are listening to the Cinik Radio Podcast, and I'm your host, Cinik. And joining me, as always, two men that are forced to admit begrudgingly that they like a Celine Dion song. Thanks a lot for that, Ryan Reynolds, Igrihe and Ryan. And on this week's show, well, it's time to put forth maximum effort and make the chimichangas, because we get to review the blockbuster hit, Deadpool 2. Because we are the Cinik Radio Podcast. Like, listen, subscribe, but most importantly, always heed high wind warnings. In 2016, comic book movies have ruled the cinema for almost 10 years, and as Marvel was kicking it into high gear, Fox was firmly stuck in the mud with their X franchise. It was extremely lackluster. As fans, we all were ready for something different, and we got it in spades in the original Deadpool movie. Funny, raunchy, gory. It was everything we dreamt of as kids an R-rated superhero film could be, and it quickly became one of my favorite movies, not only seeing it multiple times in the cinema, but on video and now in cable. And we have Ryan Reynolds to thank for that. But what now? Deadpool 2 is here. Can the franchise meet the high expectations of the first? Let's find out. Ryan, dark, inappropriate, but hilarious humor is a staple of everything that is Deadpool's character. But the constant breaking of the fourth wall for humor purposes, does it hurt immersion into the film?
No, because you know what you're getting. I think the harder thing, it's not the breaking of the fourth wall that could potentially hurt it. I think it's just all the references. Like, you know, I was thinking about this because I as we'll get into, I had an amazing time with this film. But if you're not, if you don't get all those references, and a lot of them are kind of, a lot of them are bigger pop culture things, but others are smaller, if you don't get all the references, you're not going to get the humor. But it's not written for that person then, if it's someone who's not, kind of a bit of a pop culture aficionado. So yeah, I don't think the fourth wall breaking is something to expect with Deadpool. And I think it makes it fresh because we don't see it so much, or if we do, it's kind of tongue in cheek and, cheesily and often kind of clumsily done. But this is what we get with the character and why we love the character and what makes this movie special.
Well, IG, you are a pop culture dictionary. Did you get every single reference? Were you on point with everything that Deadpool was saying? And did it take anything away from you if you didn't understand what he was saying?
I think I got just about everything. Most of it really made sense to me. And, there's a lot of it that I think maybe younger viewers, maybe younger than 30, would have some trouble with. Like, when he called Josh Brolin's Cable One-Eyed Willie. Like, you have to have watched Goonies and understood that Josh Brolin, that was his big break in the movie career, was Goonies. And there's probably people that maybe will even listen to the show that go, what the hell is Goonies? And, to you people, I say F off, because go watch Goonies. It's a Steven Spielberg movie. It's a lot of fun. And Josh Brolin is hilarious in it. So you should go watch it. But even that being said, I mean, some people could argue that he's called One-Eyed Willie because he's got one real eye and that one cybernetic eye. And it still is funny, even just on its own. So yes, it's a lot of pop culture driven type things. But I think it's funny without it. And the fourth wall break is just Deadpool being self-aware that he is almost not real. He's real and he's not real. He's a made up thing all at the same time. And I love that. It's a lot of fun. And it's different than everything else out there. I mean, it follows a lot of the same formula that the other comic book heroes movies are following, but it also does some things completely different, but it works.
Oh, it really does. And Ryan Reynolds' sense of humor is a lot like the way they write Tony Stark, except on steroids. And sometimes it gets a little far to the left as far as the things that he's saying and what he's doing as far as story context. I enjoy a lot of it because I get most of it. I would say I probably got 95% of what he said. So it made me laugh. And the funny part about it is there has never been a character written so much for an actor as Deadpool is written for Ryan Reynolds. I mean, this is this guy all the way through. If you see any of his interviews or you follow him on social media, this is what he does. I mean, the funny references, the raunchy off-the-wall humor, that's Ryan Reynolds. So I think it's really great that he's pretty much not acting when he goes to work every day. This guy is just coming to work, throwing on the suit and being himself. Ryan, the movie opens almost immediately after some catching up with Vanessa's death. they made plans to start a family. Everything is going great, and some gangsters busted it and kill her. I mean, does Deadpool need Ness to humanize him? Because when he's in the costume, he's pretty much a comedian on stage. And when he's with her, it's the only time he can actually kind of be a real life person, right?
I mean, clearly he didn't, because I think the movie works perfectly fine without her. I think, yeah, it does kind of humanize him. And I think she's the one character that grounds him. And even that scene is the only moment of real weight, in the movie, really. The scenes with her are the only ones that feel real. The rest of it does feel like a joke. I mean, it works and it's great and I love it, but those are the only times where you actually feel a real weight to the movie and real stakes. So, I guess in that way she does add that to him. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to see Deadpool for the intense character moments, and I'm not going to see his relationship. I'm going to see him be a wise ass and, for some fun action and just for nonstop jokes. So, I don't think she's necessary, but, it was a shock that they offed her so quickly. But yeah, I'm kind of mixed. Like, I think, yeah, if you want some weightiness and meat, then sure, have her. But if not, I don't see her as central to the character moving forward.
See, I don't necessarily agree that that's the only thing that kind of humanizes him, because I think he gets very humanized, especially in the third act, with how adamant he is about saving Russell. So I think that, going through the loss that he went through and then still having it in him to save a kid just because, he's just a kid, that humanized him quite a bit. So I'm not saying that's the only thing. And I think it was a very strong thing when that happened to him with Vanessa. But I think that this movie humanized Deadpool a lot more than even the first Deadpool. I really did enjoy the character arc and building that happened in this one, because it made him more of a robust character this time around. It was fun last time. I enjoyed the first Deadpool a lot, but the character grew quite a bit in this instance.
I agree with you on that, but I think it was still driven by the loss of Ness. Like
I agree with that.
So I think that so she kind of is still central to his humanity in the film. Like he needed her and her loss to really give us that and to add that kind of depth to his character. But definitely, yeah, he does show that side to him, and obviously, clearly, like most of the movie, second, third act is him realizing, really going to bat for this kid.
Well, what I can say is they're the perfect storm of dysfunctional, and I love that about them. Showing a softer side, never has there been a couple other than Jim and Pam on The Office that I love together so much, because they just work. And I'm going to channel Julie here and agree with Ryan. It was the loss of Vanessa that pushed Deadpool forward, because if not, he would have continued to act in the same self-serving way that he did in the first movie. I'm out here, I'm a one-man team, I don't need anybody else, I'm going to go kill everybody, I'm not worried about anybody else's feelings or what they need from me. I mean, even if you look at, and we'll get into this a little further later, like his interactions with Colossus even changed through this. Colossus went from being kind of adversarial and a father figure that he didn't want to a friend because of the loss of Vanessa. IG, screw a cab driver, screw a convenience store clerk. Is the most dangerous profession the spouse of a superhero? You guys are both married, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if you find out that your significant other is fighting crime out in the street at night when they're supposed to be at work, is it time to pack up and beat feet?
Yeah, it might be, because that's going to come home at some point, probably. Yeah, I mean, and especially when you're supposed to be driving the cab, I mean, there can't be a lot of actual money in the crime fighting game. I mean, that's why I think a lot of them are either super powered naturally and don't have to repair their stuff because it's indestructible, or billionaires like Bruce Wayne. You can't live the superhero lifestyle on a budget like Dupinder does, and I'm not sure how he's making it work.
He really is the only superhero that takes a cab. So I'm wondering what he does with that money. Is it all going into the suit? Ryan, you find out your wife's a superhero. Go.
I would probably try to figure out how I could be her sidekick. Like I've got some martial arts skills. So yeah, That would be it. Yes, exactly.
He wants to wear his underwear on the outside, in the other hands.
I'll be all in.
Suddenly, Ryan's buying chemistry sets for, trying to create a lab accident so he can become a superhero. Celine Dion has been around for a long time. And I've got to put out a big fuck you to Deadpool and to Ryan Reynolds for making me like a Celine Dion song. Because that opening, the James Bond-esque opening with the montage of him doing things from other movies and trying to be very James Bond-like, just cracked me up right away. Even the title cards in the beginning, I believe that they said that the movie was written by one of the guys that killed John Wick's dog. I laughed out loud. I was the only one in the theater, but I did. What did you think of the James Bond-like opening?
I loved the homage think about it. James Bond is basically just a pretty well-trained, ordinary guy that doesn't have Bruce Wayne money or anything. He's just kind of got some of the backing of the British government. And it's not full financial backing. He's just got some advantages. And yet you watch James Bond movies and he like dodges bullets and rides on the top of trains and jumps off of 80-foot cars and just crazy things that he does and lives through all of it all the time. Like, James Bond is a superhero like as much as anybody else. And so the kind of the song that they put there was, first of all, perfect. And you're right, liking a Celine Dion song is a problem, but it worked. It totally felt like a James Bond opening, but it was better because it was a Deadpool opening.
Ryan, would you take the sidekick stance or a sidekick position if your wife yelled trainee every time you got in the uniform? That was another ongoing joke that cracked me up.
There were so many great gags in this. The only critique is that there were so many gags and so many jokes that it was hard for this to tell a real story, because just every minute there was something. And the trainee gag was great. It was hilarious. It was insane. It's like, I can't wait for a third, but I don't want them to out. I just hope that they don't run the kind of overdo or overuse these jokes, but it doesn't. It worked for me this time, so I can't wait for another outing. But yeah, that gag was great. It was hilarious.
I like that they were making him wear the shirt. The shirt was great.
It was like a cut off tank top too. It was hilarious.
It was like one of those old like football like practice jerseys with all the holes in it with an X on it. And I think it actually it had a name on the back, but I think it said trainee on it.
It said trainee on the back.
It was great. And every time he said something, they're all like, trainee.
Deadpool ruins his only shot at being an X-Men by killing the child molesters in nursing shoes, and Russell and Wade are sent to the icebox. And what did he do to piss off an old fuck with a Winter Soldier's arm? IG, Josh Brolin's visuals as Cable. Despite being a lot shorter than the comic books, did he fit the bill?
Yeah. And I don't know what it is about like Josh Brolin lately. He's come a long way from Jonah Hex. If you're going to play comic book characters, Thanos and Cable are some pretty big hitters. He's worked as both of them. And I understand that it was CG, but it was still kind of over his performance on Infinity War. But I think I personally liked this Cable portrayal better than even the Thanos portrayal, which I was very happy with.
Yeah, I thought he looked great. And the performance was great. I think he had the right amount of kind of seriousness to bring to the role, but at the same time he had the kind of dry humor over time that did work. So the few jokes that he did get really landed because you're almost not expecting it, and because of the character and his own kind of the issues that he's bringing into the movie. He's got a dark, really dark backstory, and a dark reason for being there. To sort of see him then kind of infuse his own humor into it worked really well. I thought that Thanos was great, but maybe a little too monologue-y for me. And so I liked the balance that he had with this character. He was intimidating. The action scenes looked good. He obviously is jacked, so he looked the part. So yeah, really, actually, definitely, I think I agree that I like this performance a little bit more than his performance of Thanos.
one more movie and he officially becomes the white Michael B. Jordan because he's in everything now. And I can't say that I'm upset about it because Josh Brolin can flat out act, and he did something different with the role. And I was excited about this announcement as soon as I heard it because he fits visually the comic book character perfectly. I mean, he could always be a little bit bigger and muscular, but unless you're going to CG him, there's nothing you can do about that. But his demeanor, his deliverance, the cadence, the way he interacted with Deadpool, it screamed Cable to me. So I love the casting. You know, the fake arm or the metallic arm really wasn't that much of a distraction for me. I thought it was done well. And I enjoyed the way that the character was presented as far as his weaponry. It was great. I mean, I wish they would have done a little bit more with the eye, but other than that, I thought it was pretty badass. Cable's mission basically is to come back and stop Russell from killing his family in the future. Was that a pretty sound plot, or has this whole I'm going to change the future by going back into the past plot been done to death?
Both. I guess it's certainly been done to death, and they even reference it when he calls him John Connor. Like, you know, it's he, you know, clearly it's a plot that's been done to death. Clearly they're aware of it, and you almost wonder, like, well, did they make the joke to kind of give themselves a pass for using, you know, an overused plot device? But again, like, you know, this movie I'm not watching for the plot to make perfect sense. It's not a movie that I'm gonna, you know, nitpick. And luckily enough, it's self-aware enough and is able to pull a great gag or a great joke out of that. So yeah, it was fine with me.
Well, IG, like you mentioned, we recently saw Josh Brolin as a very CGI Thanos. Were you concerned about the casting, seeing that the movies were so close together, or did they do enough to distinguish the two characters?
They're completely different characters. I think they did plenty to separate them. And I think when they were all being filmed, when they were actually in production, at least in the acting portions, like Fox had not yet started their merger with Disney. So the work was so far apart and done by different studios. They weren't under any kind of guidance. I think that they truly set themselves apart. I mean, it is a Marvel movie. It's got the Marvel card at the beginning, but it is not a Disney Marvel movie. And you could tell that there are enough differences from the MCU to this that it's highly entertaining and different in a good way.
The ads made us think that we were going to get a full force team movie. X-Force was coming. The team was being introduced, including fan favorites such as Shatterstar and Bedlam, and they all died due to a high wind mishap. Ryan, funny or disappointing?
Hilarious. I mean, you know, so I wasn't a huge X-Force fan growing up, so I wasn't somebody who was kind of excited to see these characters. You know, I outside of Terry Crews, I don't even know if I know any of the other actors except the Vanisher when we finally get the quick cameo. But I love, I mean, it was completely worth the gag. Domino was the one character I would have been really disappointed if we lost. You know, I know her from, I forget her name, but she's in Atlanta and she's great in Atlanta and she's awesome as Domino. So it's the one character that, you know, of the group was like, okay, let's keep it. I like Terry Crews, but whatever. Like it was worth that gag to get rid of everybody. I loved it. I thought it was hilarious.
IG, were you surprised they cast somebody that is a pretty much household name like Terry Crews only to ram him into the side of a bus before he throws one punch?
And it was hilarious the way they did it. I mean, that whole scene of casting the X-Force and then killing the X-Force minutes apart from each other was genius. Nobody could see that coming. Like, especially after the trailers. I mean, it really looked like they were going to be on the ground hitting people and stuff because they did that trailer trick where they showed you things that didn't happen. It was genius. And killing Terry Crews in that way is absolutely hilarious. I mean, because it's not something that you'd expect. And that's the thing that Deadpool does quite often is they hit you with things that is like, okay, that was unexpected.
Well, and I'm a huge Shatterstar fan because I love X-Force. I was there at the beginning of the comics run. So I saw the introduction of Deadpool and loved him as a character. And that's, even though I've kind of drifted away from comics, that's held tight through my heart is Deadpool. I knew that he would make an amazing movie at some point. But I'm glad that I avoided spoilers, and I'm doing this more and more. Like, I try to watch less trailers. I try to read less of the internet because I'm usually right on like, oh, this is going to happen. I didn't see any of that coming, and it killed me. I laughed my ass off as they're flying into helicopters and getting chewed by wood chippers, and it was fucking amazing. And I would have never expected it. So, kudos to them for pulling something just way out of left field that just worked.
The only one that made me sad was the sugar bear. You can't kill the sugar bear.
It got undone. Yeah.
But at the moment, it's like, oh, sugar bear.
Yeah, that was
what was his name? It was Todd, right?
Peter, right?
Peter.
Yeah.
Peter? Yeah, Peter. I saw the ad.
And then the Brad Pitt Brad Pitt showing up for 2 seconds. I mean, it was great. But actually, what was kind of cool about it too is that because everyone's getting killed, like you're like, wait, does that mean Domino's going to die too? Because she's featured prominently in the trailers, and it's the one character that again I was really like, okay, they can't kill her, right? But at this point, they killed everybody, including his girlfriend. So why not? But so that it added a moment of some tension. So yeah, it was an awesome scene and totally worth bringing in all the kind of heavy hitters, only to kill them off very quickly.
Even all that, though, started to prove her luck, though. Luck is a superpower.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Well, I'm about to get to that because I believe that the breakout star in the first movie was Megasonic Teenage Longest Name Ever. She was back in this one, although I felt she was a little underused. But let's talk Domino. I mean, the character is just a badass. And IG, is luck a superpower? And did it translate cinematically enough for you on screen?
Yeah, luck is totally a superpower, and it transferred because everything she did worked. Like literally, like she didn't get hurt by anything. I mean, thrown 1,000 feet from a moving vehicle and lands an inflatable panda. I mean, you don't get luckier than that. Everything she did. I mean, even like hitting Cable with the reflection off the mirror to make his shot go off to the side. She didn't plan that. She's just incredibly lucky, and like high winds are messing everybody up. It takes her right into the path of what they're going after. Everything works, and it works perfectly.
Ryan, you are definitely not a fan of coincidence. I mean, and that was a whole lot of shit that had to go right just for her to get in the truck.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you feel about luck being a superpower?
It's a great superpower, and I think they did a great job of showing it. That in all these situations where something should have gone wrong, nothing goes wrong. So really did show whether it was again the wind's killing everybody but her, whether it was fighting I was about to say Thanos fighting Cable and living to tell about it, or dealing with Juggernaut and living to tell about it. Like there were all these situations where she should have died, and the movie at least shows you that people can and will die, but I think they did a very good job of showing luck as being a legitimate superpower and something that was really on her side, more so than like coincidence. Like they really did show it as like her being just lucky, like things just working, like someone fires a gun and it jams, like just all these things happen that just I think they did a really great job of kind of showcasing that superpower.
Well, and it's not just lucky, like everything goes right, because literally right behind her, Deadpool, everything's going wrong. He tries to do the same stuff, get catapulted into the back of that truck, and I got it. No, I don't. I mean, so my understanding of her superpower is if you're close enough to her, the luck kind of rubs off on you. And he wasn't close enough to get any of that help.
Well, she looks great. I mean, she's got a unique power set, and she got shit done. But IG, is she one of the most interesting characters that they've introduced in the MCU yet? And would you like to see a Domino solo film?
I don't know if she would work well as a solo film. I think she's a great character. I really enjoyed it. She was fun to watch. I don't know if she's deep enough to run on her own, because I don't know if she's ever run on her own, even in a comic. Like most of these people have had their own comic at some point, even if it's just a few comics run off. But I think Domino's either been like an antagonist or a sidekick or something to everything else. She's not kind of had her own run. So I'm not sure there's enough even source material to do it. I think she needs to be around more. And she, in this movie, I think was one of the primary players, but I don't think she would, at least not yet, be strong enough to run a solo film.
Yeah, I would agree that I think maybe we need another film or two, but I think the actress is strong enough to pull that off. And I don't know enough about the backstory of the character, but I think she's a strong enough and charismatic enough actress that if let's say we get an X-Force movie and that does really well, and she's featured in that she could springboard into kind of like with Vance, kind of there's enough of an outcry to kind of get a Black Widow movie, a similar type of a thing where we get a kind of strong female character in one of these team up movies, and it's like, all right, well, let's give her something more to work with. So I think as an actress, she's definitely strong enough, and a movie or two down the road, it could be a viable option.
Ryan, you're Colossus, and we all have that friend in our lives that just can't get out of their own way, or their life would just be just so much simpler if they would get their heads out of their asses. Let's talk the relationship between Colossus and Deadpool. Do you sympathize with what Colossus is going through, or would you give it up a long time ago because Wade is just a lost cause?
I don't know. I think I personally would probably give up. I don't have that kind of patience. But you can tell Colossus kind of is like got a heart of gold, and you can tell he really does care. And I think he sees Deadpool as a project. And again, it's one of these weird situations where you have this movie that's basically, for all intents and purposes, just a ridiculous comedy. But I think between Ness and Colossus, you actually have moments of humanity with him, and moments where he people care for him, and he cares for them, and he feels pain when he lets him down, and you can tell that there's a relationship there. So I did commend the movie that, again, for all the ridiculous comedy, there are moments there where you actually kind of feel something, and it's not just ridiculous gag after ridiculous gag. It's like 99% ridiculous gags, but then every moment here and there you get something that feels real, and it somehow, I don't know how, but it somehow works in the film.
IG, have you ever had that friend who's a decent guy but just a complete fuck up? And have you been in Colossus's role before, where you've tried to help but nothing works?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've had people where they just were like fashion failures completely. Like, I'm not the sharpest dressing guy, but I can put some clothes on and don't look like I just came out in 1972. I've had people that just did not know how to move around the world in an adult way, and I worked with it. And this with Colossus seems like he's dealing with a really rambunctious 3-year-old all the time. Like, he speaks already, and he runs around and he does kind of crazy stuff, but he's like a 3-year-old, Deadpool is, and Colossus is like a dad, running after him going, no, come back here, don't run into traffic. And the kid's like, look at the car, Daddy, I'm going to go get it. And it just keeps going, and the motor never stops. That's partly why I think he's like a 3-year-old, because if any of you have ever been around one, they're just like that.
They are until they just pass out due to just pure exhaustion. They're go, and then they just fall right on their faces, and they'll sleep anywhere, even in the middle of the street.
Yeah, the sugar high wears off, and they're down right there. It does work. It's just nuts how Colossus, right when he was at the point of giving up, and just like a child, just like that 3-year-old, they do that one thing to pull you back in, and you can't resist it. I mean, that's how it works. I mean, Wade's standing out there doing the say anything with his iPhone. It was just like, that one time when you're ready to say, the government can come take these kids, and they come and say, I love you, Daddy. And they're like, okay, you can stay.
He's not at all speaking from experience. Listen, superheroes weren't the only people that died in this movie senselessly or needlessly. The villains got a little bit of a taste of it too. Ryan, Black Tom Cassidy is a fairly significant villain in the X-Force genre. But I got to ask you, do Black Tom lives matter, and is Cable a racist? CNN wants to know.
That was great. Again, they were able to take his name and run with it and come up with at least 5 or 6 solid jokes based around it. And I mean, that's the beauty of this movie. I love that. And again, I guess it sucks that he's a fairly major character that they oft just for a gag and just for a joke. But again, that's the beauty of this movie, is they will do anything for a good joke. And it was definitely worth it to get the Cable racist jokes. I loved it.
So what you're saying is Black Tom lives don't matter.
IG, The last time we saw the Juggernaut was in 2006 in X-Men's Last Stand, played by Vinnie Jones. Just a guy in a suit running through walls. Pretty good showing, but lacked the size and power of the comic book Juggernaut. This time we've got a full CGI treatment a la the Hulk. Which one did you prefer?
The actual physical look of the Juggernaut, I preferred this one. A little more of the acting and the ability to see a face that looked real. I guess the last one. I liked how the Juggernaut looked, but it certainly looked CGI in this one. It wasn't as well acted, but it was still a lot of fun. So if there's any shortcoming in this movie, it would be Juggernaut. And I think it was cool that he was there. I think it was awesome to see him, and it was unexpected because I hadn't heard the Juggernaut was going to be in this until I was seeing him in the theater. But it was still probably the weakest point in the movie. And it's funny because in The Last Stand, which was a pretty terrible X-Men movie, the Juggernaut was almost the strongest thing in there.
Ryan, ripping Deadpool in half and the whole growing your body part gag resulted in Deadpool shirt dicking it like a pro. It also showed the dark sense of humor, which is frankly up TJ Miller's wheelhouse. It's right in TJ Miller's wheelhouse. Are you saddened that TJ's inability to keep it together has costed him his shot, not only in this, because it sounds like they won't have him back for X-Force, but he also lost his gig over in Silicon Valley?
Yeah, I mean, it's disappointing because he was definitely a fun character to have, but I think he's one of those actors, like he's TJ Miller, like he's gonna be the same guy in everything, just different levels of it. And I think that there's more than enough between the writing in this movie and Ryan Reynolds and his comedy chops and whatever else they'll bring to the table that I don't think we need TJ Miller. And I think 2 movies is enough. It seems like they cut some of his stuff out. I wouldn't be shocked if they did. And it looked, if I'm not mistaken, when they did the post-credit thing, like with the pictures and everything, like looked like they showed like a glass of wine getting roofied, which I'm interested if that was like a little bit of a dig at him and some of the allegations towards him. But yeah, I think he's one of those guys, like, yeah, he's hilarious, he's funny, he's fun, but if you've seen him in one thing, I feel like you've seen him in everything. So, he's replaceable. And I don't think that the next movie will be any less funny because we don't have him.
We're going to get some Don Cheadle action. We're getting we got a new Rhodes. We're going to get a new TJ Miller, and that's fine.
I liked TJ Miller in that particular part because I thought verbally he could keep up with Ryan Reynolds very well. I remember him from the very beginning of his career where he was just a kid on Cloverfield. His first big interview with Opie and Anthony, he was just happy to be there and so thankful. And I mean, we fast forward it's been about 15 years now, and he's just a straight up dick that's just kind of drinking and drugging his whole career away. And I think the kid has a lot of potential. And I think he is really kind of funny in a millennial sort of way. But to lose jobs like this just because you're going to, hit on a girl when you're already married on a train and then call in a bomb threat or show up to the set of Silicon Valley and not read the scripts and fall asleep between takes. I mean, you're signing your own death warrant. What do you think, IG?
You're absolutely right. I mean, it's that classic looking the gift horse in the mouth. He kind of had all of the greatest gigs going on. You had a job with HBO. You had a successful Marvel movie career. You had everything going for you. And all that's going to do is lead you into more work and more money and more fame and more opportunity. Even if there's like passion projects that he wanted to do, the ability to do them was there. And he threw it all away for nothing, really. Because, I mean, if you didn't want to be with his wife, great. Go get a divorce. It's not uncommon in Hollywood. You can be with other women if you want, but do it the right way. It's not a big deal. Don't call in bomb threats for any reason. That's generally viewed upon as a bad thing. And it's all going to come back and bite you. In today's world, like, stuff moves way too fast. You're going to get caught. Just don't do it. Like, I mean, and the thing is he's kind of disappeared. And I know that he's still out there doing something, but, he's not going to attain the presence he once had. I mean, if we look at it, like earlier in his career, Robert Downey Jr. made some huge mistakes. The difference is there wasn't all the social media to blast him every chance you got when those mistakes were made. We're in a different world. You can't do those things and try and come back later.
Can you imagine the Robert Downey Jr. memes about him falling asleep in some stranger's house and people finding them in some kid's bed? I mean, that would go on for months. Ryan, we cast an actor that is well past medium size to play Russell. And we want to point out that superheroes come in all shapes and sizes. And do you agree with the casting choice of Julian Denson as the conflicted villain Fire Fist? And was the repeated jokes of a splash of diabetes slightly sticking their toe over the line?
I mean, yes, to an extent, it is a little over the line, but that again, this is a movie. We didn't come here for PC comedy, and so I was okay with that. I thought the kid was great. So regardless of the weight and kind of all superheroes, getting a chance, or all superheroes coming in all shapes and sizes, I thought the kid did a great job, and I think in that way, it's like they clearly, to me at least, cast the best kind of actor for that job, and he happened to be a little on the hefty side, and again they got some good gags out of it. So yeah, it's not something that really bothered me much in any way, and all I can say is, like I said, the kid was great in that spot, so I was happy that they went with him.
IG, the fight between Colossus and Juggernaut was pretty epic, but what fight in the movie was your favorite?
Ooh, there was plenty of good ones. I mean, I'm going to have to go with just between Deadpool and Cable in the back of the truck as they were trying to escape. I think that was my favorite fight. And I think not withholding that, like, it had the flashback to Wolverine Origins with him like swinging his swords around, like supposedly blocking bullets, like he blocked the first one. And I saw a side-by-side comparison earlier today where they showed those two scenes, and like the sword moves at almost exactly the same angle and everything, and the bullet splits off just like it did in Origins. And then only for him to like do the whole sword thing again, and then like half of the bullets get through and shoot him. And I mean, he doesn't say the line from the trailer where he's like, "Oh, your bullets are really fast." He doesn't say that in the movie, which is fine, but you could see that he's like got shot a few times and is like, "Whew, that hurts." I like that whole fight. I mean, the whole thing. I mean, even Domino getting involved, the whole fight.
Yeah, that
worked.
was a disappointment that they didn't put that line in from the trailer. I don't know why they would change that. Maybe they cut it for time reasons, but it was pretty good. But Ryan, what was your favorite fight in the movie?
There's nothing that stands out as like that was the fight. I liked the fight with Juggernaut. I think the CGI was not perfect, but it still, I was still in it, and I think it was a really cool kind of balance of everybody using their powers to the best of their ability, but fighting this just monster that couldn't be beat, and then finally finding a way to defeat him. I thought was fun, and I think that was probably the most engaged. But the scenes were both all very good and serviceable, and but at the same time nothing quite stood out as like as spectacular. I did like, like Ig mentioned, I liked that scene with with him cutting out some of the bullets. I thought that was great, but I think there were kind of bits and pieces in all the fight scenes that worked. Even in the kind of opening montage of fight scenes, there was some great stuff there too. So I think there were kind of bits and pieces that worked, but I can't say that any one kind of overall scene really stood out to me.
Juggernaut is probably my favorite X-Men villain. They have a lot of good villains in their catalog, but he's probably my favorite.
Well, clearly he was Deadpool's favorite too.
Exactly.
He was a fanboy, right?
There was a little big thing there too, where it was a nod to the comic book, because the first thing Deadpool did when he started fighting him was jump up and try to get his helmet off, because everybody, all comic book fans know that's the only way to beat the Juggernaut is to get his helmet off. So that was kind of cool too, that he was up there twisting it, trying to get it off. I loved...
Sun's getting real low.
Yeah. The references were just great. I mean, I enjoyed both of those fights, but the Colossus Deadpool Juggernaut fight was probably my favorite in the movie. Despite Wade's best efforts to die, Vanessa tells him he's not ready yet. He can't say goodbye, and she sends him back. IG, did you get a little bit of the feels? I mean, are you as invested in Wade and Vanessa's relationship as I am? Are they not the perfect dysfunctional couple?
Unfortunately, yes, I got a lot of feels from it. And when you're sitting laughing your way through most of this movie, and then all of a sudden you're starting to feel water in your eyes, it's a problem. And it's amazing how they were able to do that in this movie. Because they did have emotional arc, and I mean, it didn't take you too much to anger, didn't take you even really too much into sadness, except for right then, because you could tell that he just wanted to be with Vanessa. And it would have been great, but nope, it's not his time.
What I loved about it, and Ryan, I don't know if you picked up about this or not, but I mean, outside of Vanessa, Deadpool gets on everybody's nerves. But the tone of the conversation from Colossus to Domino to Cable, it was different with all of them. It was slightly instigating and it was slightly annoying, but they all dealt with them in a different way. Do you think that there's kind of a charm in those interactions?
That's the first time I really considered that, but you're absolutely right. Like, he does have a slightly different, the way he interacts with everybody is slightly different. And and I think that's unique about the character, actually, and that some are more annoyed than others, some banter with him, some just ignore him. They're definitely I'm wondering how intentional kind of that is, because it really does work for the character, and I think it adds dimensions not only to Deadpool but to the other characters, because it really shows how different people react differently. I think a lot of times, whether it's books or movies or TV, that you see engagement between, kind of one character interacts with everybody the same way. And it's a situation where Deadpool really does have different, he annoys the hell out of everybody, but it's a different kind of annoyance and a different kind of relationship between the different characters. And it definitely adds depth to him and the other characters.
And he must be okay, because Negasonic teenage long name as ever girlfriend still likes him.
Even that, what was her name, Yu-Gi-Oh or something like that? I love how happy he was always to see her. Like, it was always a smile and a wave, like, hi, the voice went up as octaves, that was always great. But IG, put yourself in the movie and you've seen all the different interactions with different characters. How would you deal with Deadpool? Would it be more like Colossus, more like Domino?
Oh, probably more like Domino, a little more snarky, smart-ass responses back to him. I mean, quite honestly, Cinik, your and I interactions back and forth at each other are very Deadpool-like most of the time.
Ryan, Cable reverses time and uses his last charge on his time machine to save Deadpool. Was he telling the truth? I mean, is he sticking around to save the future, or did he go back to save the merc with the mouth? Did Deadpool rub off on him a little bit, and not in a perverted peep show kind of way?
If anything bugged me, it might have been that decision. Because I don't know, like, why does he make the choice? Because, yes, Deadpool didn't really help Cable. He just stopped Cable from killing the kid, so he saved the kid. But did he? I don't know. It's hard to say that. Like, I have a hard time seeing how he rubbed off enough on him to not want to go see his family again. But that part bugged me. Not, if anything's gonna bug me in the movie, maybe that bugged me a little bit. That just, like, I didn't quite buy that decision. Like, I didn't quite buy him being, him realizing that, Deadpool sacrificed himself for everybody else and he deserves to live, and that he genuinely appreciated Deadpool's help. Because again, without Deadpool's help, the kid would have been dead. He would have saved his family. He'd be back home. So I think, all Deadpool did was save the kid. And was that enough for Cable to see his humanity and decide that, he deserves a second chance? I don't know.
In essence, though, Ryan, I mean, didn't Deadpool save Cable? Because we don't know his backstory or what he's doing in the future, but he really stopped him from assassinating a troubled kid and already preordained what he was going to become even before he had done it. Do you think that maybe some of that was thanking Deadpool in a way of, hey, thank you for not letting me do that?
I think that has to be the reason. I just don't buy it from a hardened killer. To be a soldier or to be a fighter and a hero or anti-hero or villain, whatever you want to call Cable, to be at that level, there's a certain amount of empathy that has to be lost. You just can't have it. And a certain amount of your humanity that has to be lost. So while I can buy him making a decision to save the life of somebody close to him, and I can buy that being his motivation and his reason for acting, I don't know that I buy that he has that amount of empathy to save that thought process is something that might take time, for somebody who's in his position and who's dealing with what he's dealing with. So I just feel like in that moment, I find it hard with the amount of emotions that would be going through him, with regards to his family, to make that decision. So, like I said, it's not going to kill my review of the movie. I just don't know that I quite buy it, because I don't think they sold me on cable kind of buying into Deadpool's changing and becoming a better person through the movie. So yeah, like I said, that has to be the explanation. I just don't quite buy it based on what I saw on the screen.
Well, I think it really boils down to, like, Deadpool was proven right. And I think that it was basically the payback for showing that not killing the kid and showing the kid that he does matter to other people was enough to stop him from going on the murderous rampage that ended up killing Cable's family, because he showed him, look at your bear, and it cleaned up and there was no more blood on it. And I think that's really what kind of took Cable and turned him into, all right, let's flip this back. Let's stick this metal in his chest so that he doesn't die. I think Deadpool earned that at that point. So I think it's just more that way. And not that your points aren't great. I just think it was simpler than that, because you're right. I mean, he is a mercenary and a killer and everything else, and just trying to get him to go the other direction on a whim just wasn't going to work. But get him to go in another direction because he could see that somebody else deserves it. That makes sense to me. And maybe I'm way off too, but that's what I thought about it.
IG, in the end, we get the heroes walk the full roster of X-Force with Deadpool in his comic book gray outfit. Do you think that we see Colossus and Megasonic Teenage Warhead in X-Force, or will they go back to the X-Men franchise?
Well, we haven't seen Negasonic in the actual X-Men franchise. Colossus has been in and out of it a couple different times in a couple different iterations. I hope they stay over here. The X-Men's got just a huge gang of people they can pull from if they want to keep doing X-Men movies. So I think that they can leave a couple out and just leave them to other properties. And that's what I'm hoping happens, because Colossus has always been almost a tertiary character over in any of the movies they've done, and he doesn't deserve that. I mean, if you've read any of the X-Men comics, Colossus is awesome, and he's been underused everywhere in all of the other X-Men movies, and here he looks like a legitimate badass, and I missed that in the other movies. I'm glad they gave him a spot where he could do that.
Well, Colossus is sort of like Spider-Man's Green Goblin, where they just can't seem to get the character right. They, 2 or 3 times they've tried now to cart the Green Goblin out there in the Spider-Man franchise, and it just never seems to work. And it's like that with Colossus. They never quite hit the right tone. They'll get the right actor, and the CGI will be wrong, or they just don't give him enough to do, or they don't make him powerful enough. I mean, he got his ass kicked, sure, but he really stood toe-to-toe with the Juggernaut. And in comic book terms, that's really no small feat. Ryan, in the end, did they do enough? Were you sitting there in your seat and you already had your money out in anticipation of X-Force? Are you ready for the announcement? And do you think the group could be as big as the Avengers?
Let's see. They'll take it kind of reverse order. I don't think it can be as big as the Avengers. I think nothing's going to be as big as the Avengers. Nothing outside of maybe Star Wars will be that big. I think the groundwork that they laid to make it, I don't think the Avengers is going to be as big as, like, when we get into phase 5 and 6, I don't think that'll be as big as the Avengers is right now. Just they laid so much groundwork over 10 years and really built this world in a way that I just don't see anybody else doing. I think also the R rating, hurts it, because I know a bunch of parents who, went opening night or opening weekend and the kids couldn't go. So I think, you got a couple strikes against them. So yeah, I don't think it'll ever be as big as the Avengers, but it doesn't need to be. I was money in hand. You can take all my money to see another Deadpool movie or an X-Force movie. I loved it. So yeah, I'm excited, and I think it hit all the right notes for what I wanted and expected out of it. And I don't know how long it'll last, because at some point that kind of humor will start to dry up. But hey, I think we got another couple solid movies. The one thing I left that movie thinking is, they should retire the character cinematically if and when Ryan Reynolds is done playing him, because I don't see how anybody else will ever get the character right, and it might not be fair to even give anyone a chance.
Well, it's very Joker-esque in that way. I mean, the guy does such a good job that I can't imagine. I think that he's so into this character and he's such a comic book nerd like we are that if they made 100 Deadpool movies, he would suit up for each and every one of them, even if it cost him doing another role again. I think he's that deep in it. And I wish there was that level of commitment from other Marvel characters and Star Wars figures, but we'll probably never see something that's so simpatico again. I know we've discussed this at length on the podcast, but this Deadpool movie is slightly underperforming compared to the last, and the other was out of nowhere. We never expected to make as much money as it did. Do you think now that Disney has bought Fox, that outside of X-Force, do you think we see another solo Deadpool movie? Why or why not?
Well, I know it's underperforming compared to the last one, but I think compared to its budget, it's still going to easily make its money back and then some. I would hope that alone leads into another solo Deadpool movie because, 20th Century Fox and Disney and everybody else who's into making movies these days tends to just ride any horse that will run as long as it will make money. If they can make sequels, and you know what? Superhero movies are prime for sequels all the time because there's just material upon material upon material to draw from. So will we get one? Maybe not. But do I hope for one? Absolutely. Because I mean, as much as I want to see an X-Force movie, there's been enough things with Deadpool alone that they could go a lot of different directions for some very interesting stuff. I think, if the merger does happen, throwing him into some smaller parts in some of the other MCU places would do a lot of groundwork for putting out another solo movie because, I mean, Deadpool has interacted with a lot of the Avengers, with Spider-Man, with a lot of the people that have already had movies and have movies upcoming. And I think the potential is there with the purchase to get that to happen. So I'm hoping for that, even though he's generally an R-rated character, they could PG-13 him for a little 5-minute piece in Avengers 4, and that could help build some more momentum because, the other part of it is while the marketing machine was pretty high, you can't market an R-rated movie like you can a PG movie just because you can't get the same viewership. You can't get the same people into the theater. So I'm hoping so. I mean, I didn't expect this one to hit box office mark at least right away like the other one did. Some of that is because it's only 2 weeks or something after Infinity War. And that's going to hurt because there's lag, right? I mean, I think the only thing that's going to help hold Solo up next weekend is that it's Memorial Day weekend and people have an extra day off. So there might be lag going into that too, because there's been a lot of fun things come out recently and people are only going to go to so many movies a month. And sometimes that's one every other month. When you get to this time of year when so many great things are coming out, it's hard to keep up.
I agree. Listen, it's a Marvel movie, so there's going to be some post-credit scenes. And if you got up and you left early this time, you really missed out. There was some great stuff in the mid-credit scenes as far as Ryan Reynolds stopping himself from making Green Lantern, fixing the Origins problem, and going back and saving Peter, Sugar Bear. Ryan, your thoughts on the cutscenes, the movie, and your rating?
Prior to the movie, I heard read a few things saying that the mid-credit scenes was among the best of any of the superhero movies, and it definitely was. I mean, there were jokes that were referenced multiple times between the two movies, and also in just all the marketing leading up. But it was great to see him kill off the original cinematic Deadpool and to kill himself off and to save Peter and to save Tess. Like it was cool. I think the only weird thing is that I guess it's all now canon. So the next X-Force and Deadpool 3, she'll be alive and hopefully we'll get some more Peter. But I love the scene. I love the movie. I think I liked it better than the first. I think the humor again was great. It worked really well. I love the gags. I love the nonstop outside of those couple small moments of actual emotion, that it just was nonstop jokes, and it was hilarious. And, there wasn't much of a, plot was pretty thin. There were tons of continuity issues, but that's not what you're going for this movie. You're going for the pop culture references, the jokes, the breaking the fourth wall, and it worked. I mean, it really, like, it hit the spot for me. So, I'm going to give it a 9. Again, if we're looking at it just for all the technical things that a film needs, probably wouldn't give it a 9. But for what I wanted out of this movie, again, it just hit the right spot for me. Easily a 9 for me. Something I'm definitely going to go see again in theaters, and we'll rewatch tons, because I just thought it was hysterical, and I'm sure there's stuff I missed that I can't wait to see on a second and third viewing.
Well, and that was the fun part about the original movie, is that you could watch it over and over again, and there was something that you always missed, something that you picked up that, that's really funny, or that was in the background, and that was pretty hilarious. And as I said in my opening, the original movie is definitely in my top 5, if not top 10 movies of all time. And the sequel might be a little better for just about every reason. Despite being slightly plot light, it made up for it in so many different ways. The cast was great. The jokes were great. It was funny. The action was fun, and it was interesting. I loved Wade's journey, and I can't wait for X-Force. Domino was amazing. Josh Brolin was great as Cable, and the closing montage was as near perfect as any end credit we've ever seen. If I could turn back time, I'd go see Deadpool 2 a couple more times. I'm going to give it a 9, and now bring me Captain Solo.
I really like this, and I'm with you guys, where it was at least as good as the original. I don't know if I'm going to say better, because I really like the original a lot too, but I don't think this was any worse either. I loved all the jabs at different properties, and maybe they could have spent some money to put some extra X-Men in here as they closed the door with all the X-Men standing behind him. There was just so many things in here that were worth watching, that it just made for a good time. And, you had heart in this movie, and there was an actual arc to the character. While the plot may have been a little thin, Deadpool became a lot thicker. He got a lot more to him. And, that makes for a lot of good things to happen in a movie. So I'm right there with these guys. I give it a 9 too. And really, if you haven't gone out and seen this yet, go see it. And if you have gone and seen it, go see it again, because I also saw some of the filmmaker stuff saying that there's cameos and Easter eggs that people haven't picked up on yet. So I think it'd be fun to see what kind of things you missed the first time around, because there's just a ton of stuff in this movie. And there you have it. 9s across the board from the Cinik Radio podcast. Excelsior, true believers. You've reached the end of the Cinik Radio podcast. I'm Igrihe. With me have been Cinik and Ryan. We had a great time this week. Next week, we'll be back with Solo, a Star Wars story. And us being the Star Wars nerds that we are, can't wait to bring it to you. We love every listen, like, and comment that we get. Send all your comments, questions, and concerns to CINIKRADIO@gmail.com. Find us on the internet at CINIKRADIO.com. Look for us on Facebook at Facebook.com/CINIKRADIO, and find us on Twitter at CINIKRADIO. And until next time, don't get captured.
Follow the podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and at CINIKRADIO.com. Available for download on iTunes.